Your Love Does Matter and the Footprint We Leave Behind, featuring David Cunningham. What if love isn't just something we feel, but something we are? In this episode of the Talking Addiction Recovery podcast, we sit down with David Cunningham, author of Your Love Does Matter, to explore transformation, grace, and the lasting impact of our daily interactions. Drawing from decades of leadership, including 35 years with the Landmark Forum and now leading The Awakening, David shares the difference between change and transformation. While change often feels forced and fear-based, transformation creates new possibilities and powers us from within. We explore why transformation is not the same as change, the difference between truth and reality and personal growth, relating to love as a way of being, not just an emotion, the meaning of grace as love that doesn't require deserving, and the concept of a love footprint and how our smallest interactions leave a lasting impact. David wrote Your Love Does Matter as a conversational love letter, intentionally designed so readers experience love while reading, not just learn from about it. If you work in recovery, mental health, or simply want to live with greater intention, this conversation offers a powerful invitation. Expand your love footprint.
This is Talking Addiction and Recovery, the podcast talking, you guessed it, all about addiction and recovery. Join your host, licensed professional counselor Andrew J. Schreier, as he and his guests break down recovery topics with raw honesty, delving into niche conversations around the topics of substance abuse, mental health, and gambling. We intend to meet individuals where they are on their own personal journey of recovery, with dignity, respect, and compassion. We'll do more than talk addiction and recovery. We'll explore it. We're glad you've joined us. Here with today's episode, your host, Andrew Schreier.
Before we learn about this episode's guest, I want to take a quick minute to share something exciting. Talking Addiction and Recovery podcast now offers free continuing education credits for select episodes. Currently approved through IPGGC for gambling counseling credentials, with more approving bodies on the way. You can check out what's available at andrewjschreier.com/continuing-education. I'm really proud of what we built there, and I can't wait to share more with you. Now, let's get into today's conversation. David Cunningham is a renowned transformational teacher, spiritual practitioner, and lifelong advocate for humanity. From humble beginnings in rural Pennsylvania to leading arguably the #1 transformational program on 6 continents, David's impact spans over 30 years as a senior program leader with Landmark Worldwide, where he helped more than 500,000 people unlock new levels of freedom, authenticity, and love. His leadership has supported communities in healing, executive leaders in evolving, people from all walks of life and rediscovering what truly matters in their lives. His book, Your Love Does Matter, A Journey to New Consciousness and Expanding Your Love Footprint, is a distilled summary of all of his life work. This book offers a profound path to healing, forgiveness, loving freely and fully, and spiritual growth, helping each of us reclaim the truth we are here to love. Today, we'll explore David's incredible journey, his transformational teachings, and how each of us can expand our own love footprint in the world. You can learn more about David Cunningham in the podcast notes. On this episode of Talking Addiction and Recovery podcast, we want to welcome David Cunningham. Thanks for joining.
Hello to you and to everybody listening. Wonderful to be with you.
We are going to talk more about your book, Your Love Does Matter. Before we do, can you give the audience a little bit of a background about yourself?
Sure. I spent most of my life leading transformational programs around the world. I led a program called the Landmark Forum for 35 years. I'm now leading a course called The Awakening, and a new transformational program that brings together both transformation and spiritual awakening. So I'm very pleased with that. Before that, I started my career as a special ed teacher way back in the 1970s. I taught autistic children for a while. Discovered that if you really want to serve kids, you have to work with their families. So I got trained in family therapy and started doing family work. Learned soon that if you really wanted to support a family, you had to get community services for them. So I started community advocacy and founded what was called the Connecticut Justice for Children Collaboration. Went from there to the national level and was a director of what's called the National Committee for Prevention of Child Abuse. So really have spent my career, as far as I know, as best as I can, serving people in being powerful, serving people in being healthy, serving people in being fulfilled. And I'm not done. So here we go. Let's keep going.
That's incredible. I like how you move from like the individual to knowing then it's a family. I'm glad you brought up family and family systems. I was so fortunate to work under LMFT for a while, who gave supervision. I think there's not enough of that. I think more clinicians could benefit from like LMFT experience. But then you also graduated to like larger systems at play that go on. So before we dive into your book, I just want to ask, like, what stands out really about when you talk about something like transformation? Often we look at it from like an individual perspective, like this person, but then also we are dealing with a system like a family, or we're dealing with systems, like legal, with, community stuff. So how do you look at what you do in that sense with transformation from individual to a much larger system involved?
Well, when transformation happens, literally a whole new world of possibility becomes available. So if transformation happens at the individual level, then things I thought were impossible for me no longer are impossible for me. And in fact, nothing seems impossible. So it's when transformation happens for an individual, they're left relating to the world that anything and everything is possible for them. That's the individual transformation. If you go on up to a family transformation, it would be the same thing, that everything is possible within this family and for this family. Go up to the community level, it would be the same thing. So it leaves one very, very, very empowered, standing in front of everything being possible versus no, that's off limits. I can't do that. I have limits, whatever. It takes away the barriers and limitations most people experience in their personal living. And it takes away the barriers and limits that most people see to impacting communities and bigger systems.
Thank you for that. That's such a fascinating thing. I don't think we talk about that enough. With we talk about individual, we talk about a family, sometimes systems, but we don't always use. I think we use the word change more than we use transformation.
Yes. And that would be, in fact, something I would really recommend people to move away from. There's the old saying, the more you try to change, the more things stay the same. Okay, well, they're not kidding about that. That's not change causes persistence. So I really would encourage people to move away from the work of change. It literally causes persistence. And whatever you're trying to change stays in existence. If I'm trying to change it, it has to be there for me to be trying to change it. So it has to persist. Transformation is something else. Transformation is when you let something be, you let it be, and you completely independent of that, you create a whole new possibility for yourself in your life.
I think the idea of I have to change is so challenging because people think I have to be someone entirely different. I can't be who I am or what I've been doing, but like transforming sounds like this is you're still discovering things about yourself that is possible, or this is something that is going to be almost enhancing versus like I've got to let go of this whole idea of who I am. Because I think when I work in areas like substance use, mental health, to me, some people think they got to change exactly everything about them. And part of me is like, your humor is great. Why you don't need to change that, or your creativity. I don't want that changed. I think when we present change to people, there's automatically some some fear behind that.
Well, I think you're at the heart of the matter, Andrew, in two ways. One is if I say you need to change, there's an implication, whether said or not, that something's wrong with you the way you are. And it never works. It never works to try to empower people from a starting point of something's wrong with you in the first place. That just does not work. So change, if I'm saying that you need to change and there's an implication something's wrong with you in the first place, that in of itself sets you up for failure and disempowerment. That's one thing. The second thing that you're really pointing to, though, is we think there are things that are true about us. So we relate to, oh, it's true that I'm this way, or it's true that I'm that way. It's important that we discover the difference between truth and reality. There's realities we live in. Like you and I live in a reality that this is Friday right now. And we live in a reality that we live in the United States of America. Okay. But we don't relate to it as a reality. We relate to it like that's the truth, like this is the United States. Well, there was a point before this dirt was called the United States, wasn't there? So it's not a truth. It's a reality that got created by people speaking and got agreed upon. So I don't like to have people worry about what's true about them. I don't think it's useful. I don't think it has a ending point. It's a infinite struggle, if you will. What I have people be responsible for is what reality do they live in about themselves? What reality were they educated in about who they are? You know, some children are educated by their parents that they're stupid. They're just called stupid over and over and over again. And so the child's educated that they're stupid. That wouldn't be the truth. That would be a reality that got created. So if you can separate truth from reality, with truth, you have to argue with it back and forth. Is it true or not? With reality, you have a different choice. Do you endorse it or not? So there's certain realities that I would choose not to endorse about myself. I don't know what's true. I don't worry about that. I don't argue about that. All I am interested in is what reality do I live in about myself, and do I endorse it or not endorse it? And there are certain realities we can live in about ourselves that are empowering, and those are the ones to endorse.
How does this tie into the book, Your Love Does Matter? And I want to tie in the title right away. When I saw it and I read it, part of me is, why do people struggle to think their love matters, or that they are not loved? So now I'm trying to tie in all these things about what we say, what people have told us. So from your book, why don't people think they're loved when we try to throw that word around a lot? It's put on everything, right? Like, it's on coffee mugs and pillows, and we have days to sell. Like, the word is everywhere, yet a lot of people think it does not matter. Where do you sit with some of that?
Well, a couple things about that, Andrew. One is most people relate to love as an emotional state. In other words, I feel love or I don't feel love. Or people relate to love as a thought process, like I have loving thoughts or I don't have loving thoughts. The predicament we're in with either of those cases is that you and I don't have a say about our emotions and our thoughts. We really don't have control over them. So if we relate to love as an emotion or a thought process, we either have it or we don't, and there's not much we can do about it. In fact, we can feel loving 1 minute and literally a split second later have an emotion of anger. Okay, we don't have control over that. So there's a more powerful way to relate to love that I invite people to take on, which is to relate to love not as an emotion and not as a thought pattern, but as a way of being. So you'll notice, Andrew, there's ways that we be as human beings. We can be generous, we can be stingy. We can be tender, we can be cold. We can be respectful, we can be disrespectful. Those are ways of being. And what to notice about that right away is that's the one thing in life we have total say about. That's the one thing we have control over, is who we be. No matter what emotions we're having, no matter what thoughts we're having, we have a choice about our way of being. I can be respectful when I'm happy. I can be respectful when I'm angry. I can be respectful when I'm tired. I can be respectful when I'm full of energy. The one thing we have a say about is who we be. So if we relate to love as a way of being, then we can begin to see the difference it makes in the world. I think that since we've related to love as an emotion, we can't figure out that it has any power. It comes, it goes. We don't have a say about it. People say they love us, then they're mad at us. So it looks less powerful as an emotion or a thought versus a way of being. That's one thing. A second thing is, I don't know, I was taught that when I was really young, I thought love really mattered in my family. And then my dad turned violent. When I was about 10 years old, my dad turned violent, and I'm still not sure why. But then our quote unquote loving household became a violent household. Oh, I thought love was supposed to matter. So in life lessons, sometimes we get convinced, it didn't carry the day. My love I thought it mattered. It didn't matter. Okay. That I think is also a mistake. That conclusion that, yes, I got it. My dad turned violent. That doesn't mean my love didn't matter. It just means my dad turned violent. So, to really be able to separate some of our disappointments in life from our conclusion about whether our love matters or not is also really important.
I think that's clearly important because how often does that happen where someone does something and there is usually this automatic reaction or impulse to think that that is because of me, right? Like one of the things that comes up in counseling and therapy a lot is it affects you, but it doesn't mean it's about you, but it's very quick to take what anyone does and to think that either I played a part in it or it was because of me. And sometimes it's got nothing to do with you. You know, it
Nothing.
it wasn't because of you. It affected you because you may have been exposed to something or you may have been treated a certain way, but it wasn't because of you.
Well, it's really good. We were educated that everything is cause. We live in a cause and effect world. Like everything causes something else, and everything is the effect of something else. Got caused by something. Well, if we examine it really carefully, we don't know what causes anything. I see the car run into the stop sign. Well, why'd the car run into the stop sign? Because the guy's foot slipped off the brake. Well, why'd his foot slip off the brake? Well, because he'd been drinking. Well, why'd he been drinking? Because he had a high stress job. Well, why'd he have a high stress job? Because he had a big work ethic. How come he had a big work ethic? Well, because he was raised after the war. Okay, well, why was he raised after the war? Well, because his dad went away to the war and they waited till the war was over to have the baby. Well, why was there a war? Because the Archduke got shot. Now, I'm being ridiculous, but we don't know why the car ran into the stop sign. We really don't know. It's all made up. So I, for one, don't look for cause and effect. I'm not.
People look for that, right? Like that always happens in like a time. I'm always thinking of like the movies that have time travel where someone thinks that by doing this, it will change to the way they want, like this outcome. But there's always someone who's like, wait a minute, when you do this, like it also like there's things that we don't know about or things that are going to happen that it's not just as simple as if I take this away, now this is what's going to happen. Like that simple cause effect is, I can see why people desire it or why people may hope for it, but that's often not how it works.
Yeah, if you want to pay attention to something else, what would you pay attention to instead of what caused something? Is simply what's happening. How do I interact effectively with what's happening? I don't know what caused it. I don't, I'd like to explain it, but any explanation I come up with, think about illness, right, Andrew? It's like, today, if somebody's sick, we usually say, oh, it's because of bacteria and germs or viruses or something like that. A few hundred years ago, they said it was evil spirits. Now, when they said it was evil spirits, notice what the treatment was. It was called bleeding. They would use leeches and bleed people. That action called bleeding made perfect sense given what they said was the cause of the illness was evil spirits. Well, what do we do today? We give people medicine and give them shots. A few hundred years from now, they may look back on us and go, that was crazy. They walked around poking each other with needles. That was crazy. It makes perfect sense inside of what we have assigned cause to. Okay, what if we didn't worry about cause? What if we just worried about what's happening and how to interact effectively with it? And so another person's behavior, certainly, we don't know if a person, a total stranger, could yell at me in the parking lot of a store. Why did they do that? I can make up why they did that, but I don't know. Rather than trying to figure out why they did it, let's just deal with they did it. Now, how do I interact effectively with it? That's a different question.
I want to ask you about your style of writing in the book because I could be totally wrong on this, but this is why I love reading the books ahead of time to talk about it. When I read your book, it felt more like a conversation that you were having with the reader. Like it wasn't long paragraph of long paragraph. Like it didn't read like a textbook of, just trying to explain and explain, or try to, you know, fill in all this information. It seemed like by the style of your writing that it was almost like a dialogue with you as an author. I'm just curious, what was part of your process with writing this, and why in the format that you did? Because sometimes it's just like four words to a sentence, and that's it. Then like the next one, there's a little bit here, a little bit there, but this isn't necessarily filled with long paragraphs of trying to explain or dive deep into. It feels very much like you are just having a conversation with someone, even as if they were in the room with you. Where am I with that? Am I way off? Can you share a little bit about some of that?
I am so thrilled that that's your response. I can't tell you how happy I am that that's your response to it. That was very intentional. Two things. One, the first thing I confronted is I wouldn't write a book about love. You can read a book about being effective and not end up effective at all. You can read a book about leadership and not end up a leader. So I was unwilling to write a book about love that had no impact or made no difference for people. So the first thing that guided me was this has to be a book which has people literally experience themselves as loving beings while they're reading it. It has to open that door now while they're reading. That was the one thing. And then I was writing it and I wrote, probably half the book. And then I went, no, this isn't right. I'm not satisfied with it. And I couldn't figure out what I wasn't satisfied with, but it was, oh, I'm just like writing to the world out there. I'm not writing to people, like, so it was really so. And I just happened at that point, Andrew, to be reading some poetry by Rumi. And if you read Rumi's poetry, Rumi writes like love letters. So I was reading this poetry that was truly written as love letters. I said, oh, that's how I want to write this book. I want to write it. I want to express my love to whoever's reading it while they're reading it. So I even put in the introduction that I say to the reader's introduction, I'm going to call you my beloved throughout this book. And I do. And I kept that very present for myself while I was writing. Like, this is almost like a love letter from me to the reader. So I couldn't be more thrilled that that was your experience. That's awesome.
Yeah, you do mention the word beloved in the beginning, and we don't use that word a lot. So can you tell us more about why that word it was what you wanted to relate to, not just saying the reader or like the person, but beloved was such an important word that you did identify it at the beginning as this is how I'm going to call you, so how I'm going to relate to you. And that did set the tone for the rest of the book.
Yes. Two words were important. Beloved was one. And again, the commitment was that people experienced being loved while they were reading the book. And I was committed that that was possible and could happen. And it's what really drove my race out. It to read a book on love and not experience love at the same time would be, in my view, a waste of time, a waste of words, a waste of pages. So by addressing people as my beloved would have people pause and actually like, oh, I'm beloved. Oh, he's talking to me. Like, I'm loved over here. So whatever I can do to have people have the experience of being loved, doesn't matter how much I love them. If they don't have the experience, it's worthless, isn't it? So what has people have the experience of being loved? That was one word really important to me. The other word, Andrew, I don't know if you picked up on it, that's very important to me in the book is grace. And I talk about bestowing grace and, great, I talk about grace. You have the,
I ha- I have my next question is about grace. So
okay, go ahead. Let me let you ask your question then.
yeah, so on page 19, there's a part here that says, grace is your natural state. Go within. Grace is always there waiting for you to come live in her. And I read that and I circled it and highlighted it because to me, I find it's just another word that we don't use that often. Sometimes we hear it very commonly at the dinner table, say grace. We sometimes I catch myself, this is why I want to talk about it. Sometimes when I'm working with a individual in counseling, or I'm working with counselors in my role as a clinical supervisor, sometimes I have to like say to people like, hey, like give yourself some grace, and I find that grace is another word that is really, stranger to us, but yet how often are we being intentional with it? Or I guess I would say ask you is being in that state of grace. I don't know if people look at that as a natural state versus something that I give or something that I earn or maybe that's gifted. So that was something I wanted to find out about because it's something that I highlighted, circled, and wanted to ask you.
Great. So how I'd refer to grace is like technically is love that hasn't doesn't have to be deserved and can never be lost. In other words, if it- and it often was used in a religious setting, or it was God's grace, or if you're a Christian, Christ's grace, right? There was you received God's love, you didn't have to deserve God's love, and you could never lose God's love. That's called grace. Okay, now um, I think for human beings, I don't like to reserve it just for religious terms. I like to put it into daily living. So the way I boil it down for human beings to a very workable level is, just wishing somebody well. If I wish you well, I wish you peace, I wish you love, I wish you happiness, I wish you health, I wish you prosperity, whatever I wish you, I just wish you well. I call that bestowing grace on somebody. You just wish another person well, and they don't have to deserve it, and it's free. It's just you wish them well. I think that makes it very accessible to us in our daily living, just wishing people well. And you'll notice that's when we love life. We love life when we're wishing others well. That's when we're the happiest. So bestowing grace became for me something important to make available to people in their daily living. Okay. So that's one thing about grace. And the second thing about grace is that it's when I say it's natural, I assert that when we are free, Andrew, when we're free, we love. Free from what? Free from resentment, free from judgment, free from anger, free from fear. When we're free, we love. So if my heart's ever closed, oh, the message is I'm not free. So I never ever say to somebody, you should be more loving. I would never say that to somebody. If somebody's not experiencing love, I would go, okay, what stopped you? What's in your way? Something took away your freedom. Something closed your heart. And the job it is not to be more loving. The job is to be able to free ourselves from that which closed our heart in the first place. So when we talk about grace being a natural state, yeah, when we're free, we love. That's our natural state. And if we're not in that state, it's not to try to be more of that. It's to get ourselves free from whatever closed our hearts in the first place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it ties back into we got to change. So love, like you got to change to be more loving or change to love more when really you got all the love in here, but part of it is there's barriers, there's fear, there's things that are holding it back. And that is when you transform, then be able to just experience that. Because I think some people do struggle with that, but like you got all the love in here. Like it's there, right? This isn't something you have to go find or discover.
Not at all. And, resenting, judging, that's all become normal. And
Yeah.
whether it's of others or of ourselves, resenting and judging ourselves, it's become normal. In other words, we're used to it. But just because something's normal doesn't mean it's natural. Normal and natural are two different things. So just because we've gotten used to judging, we've gotten used to resenting, we've gotten used to arguing, doesn't mean it's natural for us. What that means is something took us off track. And the job is to free ourselves from that. And then we're naturally loving again.
What kind of audiences and responses have you gotten to people on this from the book on the topic? Because I think once again, the word love, I think language matters. I think some people think that, well, what do I need to learn more about love? I know how to love. Stuff like that. So I'm curious, and I know part of it is you wrote it to be different, not just a book, but you want it to really be almost like an experience for the person versus, okay, I read it. Now, how do I do it? No, I want you to feel this now. I want you to experience this as you're reading it. So I would say, what are some of the audiences that you've spoken to, talking to about this topic, and what kind of response have you gotten from people?
Here's the most important response, okay? The subtitle of the book is A Journey to New Conscious and Expanding Your Love Footprint. So that whole notion of love footprint, I assert that just like we have a carbon footprint, we have a love footprint. In other words, every time we leave an interaction, whether it's a 30-second interaction with a clerk in a store, an hour lunch with our family, or working all day side by side with a colleague, every time we leave an interaction, we leave something behind. What do we leave behind? Do we leave resentment behind? Do we leave distance behind? Do we leave opinion behind? Or do we, in fact, leave love behind? It's called our love footprint. So, the most important response that I get from readers is that whole notion of love footprint gets in their conscious. I'll give you an example that just thrilled me. My mom is 99 years old, okay? She has a 94-year-old friend, and I was visiting my mom, and her 94-year-old friends were visiting, and her friend had just read my book and said, you won't believe what happened. I was at the grocery store. I was reaching for something on the shelf. Somebody came up behind me and banged me with their cart. She goes, I was about to turn around and give them a piece of my mind, but while I was turning around, I thought to myself, uh-oh, what about my love footprint? And when I turned around, I didn't give them a piece of my mind. I smiled at them and asked them if they were okay instead. And she goes, and it was lovely. If that happens for readers, that in the moment to momentness of their life, simple moments like that, their life, they start being aware of what love footprint are they leaving. Holy smokes, did I accomplish what I wanted to accomplish with that book?
When it comes to language, does that footprint matter, make a difference? Versus if I were to think of how do I share, like, do you notice that the idea of a love footprint either like connects with people more about an impact that they're having, or the fact that it's not just this interaction now, but how that carries or how that's left? Like, so I'm very curious about the language around footprint and how that matters in this case.
Yeah, I chose footprint because I thought it was something people could grab onto. I thought it was tangible enough of a concept that people could go, I mean, they can see a footprint in the sand when they walk on the beach. That's obvious. And there's been enough, a sufficient dialogue about carbon footprint. At least people have been grappling with it. Whether they are doing anything about it or not is another question, but it's at least something people have been grappling with as a concept is footprint. So, and when we were little kids, were fascinated by dinosaur footprints and fossils. Okay. So I chose footprint because I thought it was something that people could really grasp easily and would give people a way to really make a conscious choice as they were going through their day, a conscious choice as they were dealing with something. I have a practice of at the beginning of my day is thinking about where I'm going to go that day. Who am I going to see? What do I want to accomplish? And I plan ahead for, okay, when I go to that store, what's the love footprint I want to leave? When I go to that meeting at work, what's the love footprint I want to leave? So I plan ahead. It's in my consciousness. It's in my planning. Then when I'm done, I give myself a little report card. I grade myself on a scale of 1 to 5 after the interaction, see how I did. Um, so I chose footprint on purpose because I thought it was something tangible people could grab onto and have be useful for them.
I really love that. For me, one of the things that I've developed in going to therapy myself was asking myself, how do I want to show up today? But I also believe the footprint question really thinks about it also when I'm gone. So not just when I'm there in the moment, how I want to show up, but also what footprint do I want to leave behind or imprint? So I feel like that really ties in super well with my own therapy lesson. The very yeah, because I think it's not just showing up, but it's also the imprint that we leave, which can be lasting. It can be impactful. And we hear that on both sides, right? We hear someone who remembers something a stranger did 20 years ago in their life, and that doesn't go away, and how impactful it was and how it changed them. But then we also know we remember the times when footprints were harmful and they hurt. So I think that's to think of how my behavior isn't just occurring in the moment, but also when I leave, what footprint do I is there is really important.
I think that's so thrilling that you're even engaged in that line of thinking. Okay, you interact with a clerk in a store, and then you leave. Okay, well, they're going to wait on the next customer. How did the way I interacted with them impact the way they wait on the next customer? Then they're going to go home and interact with their family. And how did I interact with them? And how does that impact the way they go home and interact with their family? It's a really again, we're not talking cause and effect. We're not saying, oh, I'm causing something, but I can be responsible, which is different than cause. I can be responsible for, oh, look at the environment I'm creating. Okay. And I think that's a very powerful line of self inspection, quite frankly.
Yeah, I think about I one of the things I like about traveling is getting to experience just different parts of like service. And for someone who works in counseling, but substance use, mental health treatment, gambling treatment, I always think of like how can we do better with the services we provide. So I'm always attuned to like what's going on. I'm observing things, but I also notice that there are times where I'm just saying like, "Hey, thank you," and "please," and all these things to some of the staff members, and sometimes it seems like it's been a while since someone got like a thank you. Because here's what happens: I'll be like, "Hey, thank you, service was great," and you could just tell their response is, it looks like they haven't heard that in a while, and maybe it was because of all the other interactions during the day. Who knows? But also, I want to know like when I show up, I want to I try my best not to make anyone else's lives harder than it already is. I already think people have enough hard hard stuff going on. But also then when I leave, I also want them to know that there are people that appreciate their service and there are people that are gonna thank them. So yeah, I'm really enjoying the not just how do I show up today, but what is the imprint, the love imprint that I want to leave.
That's just great. And you're talking about your presence. When you're there, what do people experience given you're there? And what do you give them to interact with? Now, mostly as a society, what we give people to interact with is our moods or our opinions or our judgments. That's what we give people to interact with. But you're making a choice. Hey, I'm going to give them my gratitude to interact with. They get to experience and interact with my gratitude. That's called your presence. That's what is at the heart of your love footprint, indeed.
That's amazing. I really appreciate that. And part of me doesn't even know how much to talk about it, except like that is something that I really want to start adding on to in my experience with others because I really like the how do I want to show up, but I feel like this sort of really captures like a real full circle moment to that. So thank you for providing that to me.
Wonderful. I'm so glad. That's just great.
One thing that you do as we kind of wrap up here, uh, curious where a lot of books people read them and they go, okay, what am I going to do with this? Or they close it and that's it. That's I got what I wanted out of it. You're trying to bring an experience while reading, but then also we're carrying this idea of transformation to people who struggle with the word transformation, where they think like that's it's not possible. With all the things I've ever done, or I'm going to wait until something comes along and creates this movie moment of transforming. What would you say to people who are in those positions or in those thoughts in regards to, yeah, transformation sounds great, but I don't know if that's in for me. I don't know if that's what life has in store for me. I don't know if I deserve it. Where would you have a message for the audience about when it comes to transformation and where they may struggle with thinking that that's for them?
I don't want to oversimplify, but I'm going to say something that it's going to sound familiar, which is life all happens in the moment, right? So I don't worry about, I wouldn't worry about like, oh, have I done enough work or have I studied enough or am I on the right path? No, I get to live this moment. Just like, so if anybody has a question, just whatever they're doing right then, find another human being and express love to them. And it'll put you on the path. It'll be right there. You don't have to worry. Just it's available anytime, anywhere. Just find another human being and express love or gratitude or compassion to another human being, and it'll put you right in that world immediately. So you don't have to worry about being a student of transformation or going through a long process. Just find a human being, express love, and you're in that world.
It's great. Try not to overcomplicate it, because I think sometimes love, transformation, some of these things can be overcomplicated, and trying to keep it very simple as to what it is.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful, beautiful. Again, as a way of being, love is always available to us, and that would be what I'm committed people discover out of reading that book.
All right, David, the conversation was great. Really appreciate the dialogue and the insight. Ray, bit that you would like to leave audience members as a lasting message or anything that you got going on? Now's your time to share it with them.
Well, I would send people to my website, yourlovedoesmatter.com, yourlovedoesmatter.com. And I'm pleased to offer there, Andrew, some free things like some free meditations, which I think are great for people. They could listen, and some guided meditations, some other writings I've done, some TV interviews I've done that they could watch. So there's a lot on the website that's free and available to people. But if I had to leave one message, my message for the world right now is really clear. Let's take on individually and collectively expanding our love footprint. It's easy. It's there. We can do it today. We can do it, one time today. We can do it 100 times today. It's really an action we can take anywhere, anytime, with anybody. Expand our love footprint.
Amazing. Thank you, David, for joining. Your book, Your Love Does Matter, A Journey to New Consciousness and Expanding Your Love Footprint. We'll make sure listeners have access to links to where they can get it, where they can find you. But the conversation was incredible, and I think the work that you've been doing has definitely been leaving an impactful imprint. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for this conversation. Out of everything being put out on the airwaves today, this was a great message to get out. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Talking Addiction and Recovery with Andrew J. Schreier. We're so glad you've joined us and invite you to connect further with the show and these topics at www.andrewjschreier.com. That's Andrew J. SCHREIER.com. You can also email us directly at talkingaddictionandrecovery@gmail.com and connect on social media, Instagram at Talking Addiction and Recovery, Facebook Talking Addiction and Recovery Podcast, and Twitter at TalkAR_podcast. To stay connected and never miss an episode, be sure to like, rate, and subscribe. Until next time, friends, let's keep talking addiction and recovery.